Welcome, one and all, to episode 48. I know last time I was getting numbers confused. Okay, there are moments where I said, like, this next one will be 49. No, it's 48, because the last episode was episode 47 of this show called Endless Conversation Loop. It's the second part in a two-part, hopefully, we'll see how far we get today, series on game key cards. My name is Brandon. I am joined here today by
Professor Boom Esquire,
also known as the co-host of this show, ready to pick up the pieces from last time.
To meet you, sir.
Indubitably. You know, it was a little bit of a journey to get here. I don't know what it is with episodes lately and having to have all this, like, nonsense that goes into, like, getting to the point where we can record, but I had another instance of that today. So, one of the obstacles lately that's been preventing us from recording as frequently, although, hey, month of October, 2 episodes out, just like how it should be. In fact, it went out 2 hours ago from the time of us recording, so it is fresh off the presses for listeners. But one of the things...
So it's not technically 2 out for a month, but we recorded at least 2 this month. That was more important, I think, to get back in the swing.
Well, we had 2 releases in October. We had today's, and then, which was like the release of 47, and then 46 went out on the 13th.
What the hell am I talking about?
Yeah, whereas poor September and August were stuck with 1 each. Anyway, one of the obstacles for me that's been rearing its ugly head is, I think you put it into words in a text message when I sent you this, but it seems like my place is just falling apart. I don't know that I'd quite say that, but it's just like I've had a confluence of issues here in the apartment that require maintenance people to come by. So I have a few more if you want to know the entire history, but I'm just going to go with the ones that are relevant to pushing off recording this podcast lately. So a couple of weeks ago, actually probably about a month ago at this point, I come home from Michigan from this wedding that I attended, and I decide when I come back, I'm like, I should do a load of laundry because I'd like to have clean clothes. It's not like I really desperately needed to do it, but I was just like, it's just good to get a load done. I open up the washer, and there's this nice pool of water sitting in there. Yeah, that's fun, right?
I bet.
So, doing the thing that you do as a renter, what do? I go contact the maintenance people, say, hey, I got this problem, come fix it. And one of the stipulations in my rental agreement, I guess I shouldn't say stipulations, but like one of the things they write down in there, and they write this out in like the automatically generated email, because, you have to do this through some web portal. Somebody should be by within 72 hours to fix this. It was much longer than 72 hours. There was like, we recorded episode 46, whenever we did. I don't remember off the top of my head. A week later than we intended to, because nobody had come by to fix the washer yet. So it's like, God forbid we're sitting here recording this, and suddenly we have to stop in the middle because I get a surprise phone call or like a knock on the door that someone's here to fix this washer. So we pushed it off. It got fixed. It was all great. And then I noted this down for now incident number 2. So October 18th, I'm here at home, doing whatever. And, I look in my garbage can after like finishing food, and it's like, you know what? It's time to take this out. Time to put a new bag in here. Take it out. Go to my sink in the kitchen, because that just seems like a good place where people just kind of keep stuff, cleaning supplies and such. And I go to...
like you do.
Yeah, as you do. And I go to take a new bag off of the roll, and I'm like, why is the box that this is in so much more like flimsy than what it was when I opened it. Like, that's weird. So I shine a flashlight under the sink, and what do I find but a nice little puddle sitting there? I'm like, huh, that shouldn't be there. So I get a towel and I sop up all that water and put in another maintenance request to be like, hey, come fix this. Today is October 27th, 2025, and somebody finally came by today. So I don't know how great you are at math here, Boom, but...
I'm not. Math was never my strong suit, nor was anything.
October 18th, though, to October 27th. One day is 24 hours. Is that within 72 hours?
I would take your word on this one and say I don't think it is.
That's right, because 72 hours is 3 days. Now, to be fair, the 18th was a Saturday. So, I'm not completely unreasonable. I understand you might not be able to come by on a Sunday. But, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday last week would have been, perfect time to come by. I also, because of, ridiculous work stuff that's going on, had to specify, do not come by on Friday. That's a whole bigger can of worms I don't really need to get into here. But still, either way, the point is nobody came by last week. And for the washer, I got a call earlier in the morning saying, hey, we got people here on the complex. Can they come by later today? Today, Brandon receives no such call. So I get up and I'm getting ready for the day. And, I go into the bathroom so I can take a shower and get ready to, get around to, having my day and eventually start doing this. So I have the fan on and I turn on the water. And then I start hearing some strange sounds. Coming from, I couldn't tell if it was coming from upstairs or coming from around me. And I'm like, well, that's weird. So I finish up my shower, and there's a guy working on my sink. Here. I'm sure he knocked and, went, did maintenance, but I couldn't hear it over the fan and the shower making its noise. But, what the heck?
Yeah, I understand, you're allowed to, if you're working there, it's you have keys, all that jazz. I totally understand that, but at least, a text or something to let them know, hey, they're coming in today, just so at least you know, because then somebody was in there versus, it looks like someone broke in or something like that. It's insane sometimes.
Well, isn't even... I would have liked that, just some sort of advance notice in general, that it's hey, we'll get someone by tomorrow, right? But also, it's a Monday, so again, it's would someone be working on a Sunday to, send me that message? Probably not. But literally anything more than just, showing up. And to me, the bigger thing with it that irritates me is, I couldn't necessarily hear him knocking on the door because I'm in this room with all this noise going on. But it's clearly when you open the door, he should be able to hear the fan and the shower going. So clearly someone's here. I haven't necessarily given him permission to just enter. But I don't know. It's just it was very strange. And the best part with this, it's not done. Because he goes and he tests stuff. He's like, oh, let me replace this seal. Still leaking. So now we need to get an entirely new piece of PVC piping. And he will be back again tomorrow. And hopefully tomorrow will come with some further advance notice. But I don't expect the maintenance people to have a perfect memory of the schedules of all their tenants, but I'm probably one of the only people on this entire complex that doesn't regularly work 9 to 5 like most people. And I only put every time that I've had to write one of these out to have something done, I write out come during these times, because I don't really want to be there when they're doing this and get in the way, and it's awkward, what are you supposed to do while some guy is working on whatever in your place? And it's because, and also, I mean, it helps, if I'm up and working until, late into the evening, the next morning I really don't want to be up at, 7:30 in the morning, so someone can come here at 8 and do whatever the heck. So, that was a fun adventure, and I'm glad I got this out of my system. So
yeah, the last thing you need is to have round 6 of this.
I can't imagine there's going to be any other I never know, right? But it's I can't think of any other stuff that should need to be worked on right now. But life has a way of just.
That's when you cue
finding something.
You cue window breaking in the background, going, "Oh, son of a bitch."
Yeah. Future editor Brandon, edits in glass breaking sound now.
Oh, man.
Anyway.
But yeah.
So shall we get started on our second part here, or did you have something you wanted to talk about?
Well, I was just going to talk about, because we're recording this right before Halloween, if we had any plans, but okay.
Unfortunately, owing to those weird work issues, I get to be at the office Halloween night. Although, I'm really not much of a Halloween guy in general.
I'm not either normally. It's ironic as someone who used to cosplay semi-regularly, when I would go to conventions when I was younger. I never really liked Halloween. I'm more excited for November 1st for the candy being half off after Halloween. But the thing is that, this year I've been kind of okay with it, because, my plans primarily, it's I've got a Halloween party that I'm going to at a friend's house, and then on top of that, I also have, there's a midnight release for a card game that I'm helping out with, but I get to wear a costume, and I don't think it's a really well-known one. If you're on the internet, you kind of know what it is. You're familiar with the Smosh at all, right?
Yes, I've heard of them. They were pretty iconic when I was growing up.
They still kind of are. I am surprised how, much they've turned that entire channel around from, the, hole that was kind of dug in for them. This isn't necessarily on them. There was, the story behind, how Smosh ended up being is such a wild ride, if you go down that rabbit hole. But, one of the actors on there, Shane, has this character called The Chosen, who's literally, wearing, khaki shorts, this, very touristy, howling wolf shirt. I don't know how to describe it than that. And, wears sunglasses everywhere, and he just talks with, the most specific, voice. He's "Greetings, I am The Chosen. This place is a frickin' hellscape."
It reminds me of when South Park would do Al Gore, that voice. That's what that reminds me of.
I never realized that until you just pointed that out. You were right. But no, I'm doing that as the costume for Halloween this year, because it was funny because one of my friends for Christmas one year just randomly got me that shirt on a whim, and it's a 1-for-1 the exact shirt, and I was wearing it unironically places, which embarrassed many of people who hung out with me, but that's not the point.
Oh my god.
But it's the fact that now I have the full thing, because the hardest thing that I was trying to find was I needed a sword or something, because he, for whatever reason, has a katana also. There's a whole thing with that. But I bought a foam sword at a Ren fair recently, this year, so I have that now. And then my grandma, God bless her soul, I was kind of telling her the joke. It's he wears this weird ass puka necklace thing. And lo and behold, this morning before we recorded, she gave me puka necklace she bought on Amazon. And I'm just sitting there I wasn't expecting to have the full costume, let alone the puka necklace. But I'll be honest, I am going to wear that and I'm going to rock it. That's all I know. I'm more excited for the Halloween party than the midnight release, because we're doing a release for that new League of Legends card game that's coming out in a few days, that Riftbound. And I am helping my local LGS out with the midnight release and kind of helping people if they're interested to learn how to play. And coincidentally, before I was recording this, one of my channels that I watch for Magic content creation was making a video that they just put out on Riftbound. So I'm like, oh, perfect, a visual aid for me. Like it's
Even better. That'll make teaching go more easily.
oh yeah, and it's in multiplayer format too, which is like one of the biggest ways because it's similar to like Magic's Commander format, which I play a lot of, where you can play up to like 4 people on like a good game. And I've been also kind of studying the card set like ahead of time because there's like 250 cards that are coming out for this first set, and then there's going to be more, I think, sometime like 3 months from now or something like that. Which that could be a whole other topic on its own. Like once the game is fully announced, and I can give my 2 cents on it. But right now, it's like all I've been kind of figuring out is like, hey, who do I want to play for a deck? And I've got some feelers out at the moment, but the thing that sucks about it is like, so that like League has like an obscene amount of champions, which is really cool, but like the game itself is very interesting because they have multiple versions of those characters. So like you're not necessarily playing the same deck if you say, oh, I'm playing like say Misfortune, for example. There's like 2 different versions of Misfortune that you can play for a deck, and they both played semi-synergistic, but they can also play themselves like in separate decks if you wanted to. Like if you want to build something else. From what I've seen, there's a lot of like just flexibility with like the deck builds right now, but I feel like that's with any card game that's new, because like nobody knows what the meta is going to be. No one knows what the strong ones are, what the weak ones are. And then, you know, in 3 months, that's all going to get thrown out the window because they're going to have more stuff to add to those. God help me. I'm going to get addicted to another card game, which is even funny.
Never ends.
Never ends. The cardboard crack is real. But I think the big thing that's coming out of it is like, as someone who played League for like 12 years competitively and like has kind of like, I won't say that I've stopped playing it, but like I've played far less of it in recent years. Just knowing that I'm probably going to get involved into a card game with one of my biggest vices all through college and most of my 20s. Oh, I'm in so much trouble.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Yeah, God.
I will say that anytime I hear about that, I always think about like, I'm kind of glad that I didn't get into that stuff. And then I turn to my left from where I'm sitting right now and look at that triangle shelf with like probably 50 to 60 amiibo figures, and I'm like, well, can you really talk, Brandon?
I mean, here's the thing. I think that card games are still fun and they're very enjoyable. I think the problem with it is it's like there's sometimes in certain games there's too much product too fast. Like Magic has kind of gotten into that habit, and like we're kind of hitting that burnout, I think, with a lot of people, where it's like this year alone we had, what was it, Spider-Man and Avatar: The Last Airbender is coming out like next month for new Magic sets that they're doing, because they have like this deal with both the IPs. And then sometime in, I think it's next winter somewhere, they have like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They're doing all the Marvel superheroes again sometime next year. There's a Star Trek set coming out, for God's sake. Like, I don't know why they feel the need that we need to have all these universes beyond sets that they're doing, instead of just like, give us some original Magic cards and we'll be fine. But, you know, I think a lot of people, like, I'm not saying like it's inherently bad, because it does get new players in if it's like an IP people are interested in. Like, a lot of people got in with the Final Fantasy set that came out this year. But you may be kind of dipping your finger in too many pies in this one, where you're just trying to throw out whatever IPs just for the sake of trying to either earn a quick buck or just, you know, do whatever you're doing to make as much money as possible, because you spent the money for licensing these for a card game, and now you have to make up that cost. Like, Final Fantasy was like one of the most successful ones that they've ever had, if not the most successful. It made $200 million on day one of its release.
Oh my God.
It was one day. And they probably met their like profit quota for the year just with that, or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised. But then like Spider-Man came out semi-recently. I don't hear anybody talking about that since it came out. Everybody doesn't seem to like it. It's like, you know, I think if it's anything, it's like a collector set where it's like, yeah, I got cards with my favorite characters on them. And then it got really weird because they had a problem with the digital rights, because they had like that Magic Arena Online. they cannot use the Spider-Man cards specifically for their digital card game platform. So they had to redo all the cards and rename them with new names. They had to redo the artwork or use assets that they had. And they had to rename all of the cards in the Spider-Man set to something that was more magicified. And so many people were confused by that because it's like, well, what does this card do? And it's like, oh, it's this card. It's like, why do I have to learn two names for the same card? And it's probably...
It'll never be easy.
Well, I think it's probably because of Marvel Snap being out for as long as it is. I'm assuming that has something to do with it on the digital card front. But, like, still, these are, coherently speaking, different types of cards. Like, I get you don't want people to confuse your game with their game, but, like, I feel like if this was going to be such a big issue, then what, Wizards should have did... Like, Wizards of the Coast made this probably the dumbest mistake, was like, okay, then why did you make Spider-Man like an actual full-length set? Why didn't you just make it like a, kind of a splash set where you can just have a smaller number of cards, but it's not technically like a standard legal set, so it doesn't really affect, like, what's going on with everything else. It's like people then will just want to collect the cards then, and, they can build decks around them in other formats and whatever, but, like, I think it is very weird that I live at a time or Magic the Gathering where not even 5 years ago, probably, if you told me that I had Optimus Prime with the One Ring fighting Cloud Strife and Ryu from Street Fighter, I would think you're nuts. And 5 years later, all of that is technically true. And I'm very confused by that more and more each day.
It's like, I think we talked about this way back in, like, episode 32.
There's a very high chance of it, because, like, I'm very passionate when it comes to, like, Magic and all that, but, like, it's such a weird thing seeing so many franchises now in Magic.
Well, my thing is just, like, you're kind of diluting each brand in a way, Like, this is Spider-Man, but it's, like, Magic, and so, like, it doesn't surprise me then that these two things don't necessarily gel, because just because you like Magic doesn't mean you like Spider-Man. But I was thinking about it while you were talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I have a brilliant, creative solution to that whole problem they could have had.
Which would be?
All right. So, I don't know how perfectly this would work out, because I don't know hardly anything about either game. But since I had looked back at those amiibo figures and we were talking about this, it made me think about, do you remember back in, like, 2015, I want to say, Skylanders was still a thing somehow.
Yeah.
And for the Wii U and 3DS versions of that game were exclusive Bowser and Donkey Kong figures where you could rotate the base and have it either act as, like, a figure for the game or as an amiibo figure.
Oh.
I think what they should have done for these cards is one side should be all the Magic stuff, and then the other side is like a replica of what the equivalent cards or like some other interesting card would have been in Marvel Snap. And then they could have just had them be cards in both games.
I think the only thing, like, I like where your head's at with it, but I think the only gripe about that would be the biggest oopsie would be because the two card games themselves play drastically differently. Like, I get where you're going with it. I definitely sympathize with it. It's just, I don't think there's any feasible way to make that work. I thought you were going to say something like, because what they used to do in the past was when they would do like a crossover thing, and a lot of the times these wouldn't be like full sets like they've been doing recently. Like the first one that I remember was The Walking Dead, and they had only like a handful of like maybe 8 cards or something like that. So it was like you had Rick Grimes, you had Daryl Dixon, you had Glenn, like so on, so on. And what they would do is instead of you have all these exclusively as Walking Dead cards, in a later set, they would reprint the cards under like the whole Magic rebranding. So it'd be like a new name, new artwork, functionally the same card, but it's at least different enough. So it's like, okay, I know that this is a card that I can play, that if like, I don't want to see my deck that I'm playing with suddenly Rick Grimes is on the field and it makes no sense with the rest of my deck that I'm building. you can have the Magic version, which at least kind of fits it a little bit more clear, which they did do for a little while. There were a handful of sets where they were doing those for, what was it? I remember they were doing it for I think it was the Walking Dead cards, the Street Fighter cards, and the Stranger Things cards. But I think what was easy with it was like they were only like, at max maybe 15, 20 cards for those specifically. And they weren't even like a full set a lot of the time when they were reprinting them. They would be like an extra bonus card you could get in packs of certain sets at the time. So like you get the Magic version and say like, I think Innistrad, I forget which ones all had them, but you could get one of the cards and you would still be able to like have it there. Like I think the cards themselves are actually kind of cool when they put them in the Magic universe. I don't know if I'd necessarily go out of my way and say, hey, this is so good that I should, go buy these. But reprinting them does help it because it's like, well, now you have collectors who can get the ones or fans of those IPs that can go get them. Like my buddy is a huge Street Fighter fan. He got a bunch of, if not all of the Street Fighter cards. So now, does he want to build a Zangief deck? Sure, he can. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to, but I mean, it's an option at least, which is nice. But I think they really kind of crap the bed a little bit with when they stopped doing that, which I don't know when they stopped doing it. And just decided like, okay, well, we're just going to make these IP sets their own thing instead of having to keep rebranding into new Magic cards. And then you run into a Spider-Man situation now where it's like, well, now you have to because you don't have the digital rights. And I'd be willing to bet money they're going to probably have to do that too again when the Marvel superhero sets comes out next year. Because something tells me that they won't have the digital rights for that either.
I mean, if they don't have the digital rights to Spider-Man, what makes you think they're going to have the digital rights to whoever else they're adding into the game, right?
It's like Wizards sitting there going, please, and then bat their eyebrows. And it's like, you understand this is Marvel. Marvel's going to say, no, this is Disney.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go with this. No, this is not Marvel. This is Disney, okay? The mouse. You do not mess with the mouse.
I can definitely understand what they're trying to do, but I think when it comes down to it, it's such a weird like I don't know how to describe it. It's like they're getting the permission in almost every aspect until they realize there's one key one that they did not put two and two together, and I'm like, oh man, like I am hoping for the sake of a card game that I genuinely like, and it's not going to be a dig at like these Universes Beyond sets. I just don't personally enjoy a lot of them. I think the only exception is the Final Fantasy one because those cards at least feel like they're Magic because like it kind of is very parallel. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean they kind of just work together. They're both fantasy. What a novel idea! Have a fantasy theme for your
Yes, exactly
crossover set.
But like I'm still boggled by like by next year, I think it's November or December, we're gonna have Star Trek as a valid full-fledged Magic the Gathering set. And all I'm sitting here thinking is like, you're telling me that I am gonna probably walk into a pod and when I ask, hey, what are you guys playing for Commander decks, I am probably going to hear Captain Kirk, Frodo, and Rick Grimes all as valid options.
And then down the road, you hear someone, or like down in another table, you hear like, yeah, and I got Spider-Man, and I got a Barrett with his gun arm, like, and it's just like, whatever happened to just keeping it simple and having stuff that's within the IP, the original IP.
Yeah, and for me, like, when it comes to these Universes Beyond sets, it's like, I like to keep them in their set, basically. Like, when Final Fantasy came out, it had, like, a full-fledged set, and then there were 4 Commander decks that they made, each with, like, a specific game in mind. So, like, they made a Final Fantasy VI, a Final Fantasy VII, a Final Fantasy XIV, and a Final Fantasy X deck. So, like, all 4 of those decks by themselves, no increases and changing things out or whatever, completely out of the box, playable. You'll probably have fun with them, especially if you're a fan of the franchise, because like I loved what they did with the Cloud Strife deck, which was they made a lot of the legendaries revolve around the number 7 because obviously you would do that. The Final Fantasy XIV one focuses a little bit on like the hero mechanic and like the different job roles that people can get in the MMO, and et cetera, et cetera. And 6 ties into like the revival of a bunch of your allies theme in 6. And then 10 is more just talking about like a bunch of counters. Like it's a basic strategy, but it works for what it's doing. But long story short, it's like if you just kind of even isolated Final Fantasy, but like all that product on its own, I think it would be amazing. And you could still get cards from the set, update your decks, which is what I did, and I think people would still really enjoy it. Like it's not like trying to like say you can't mix and match. Obviously you can't. I just personally don't like to put the Universes Beyond stuff in a lot of the time with my decks, even if it's like, oh, this would make that deck even really, really much better. Like there's a red, white, black human deck that I'm working on where Caesar from Fallout would be an amazing card in that, but I don't use it because it's a Fallout card, and I try to keep that separately from everything else. And even without the card, it's fine. Like the deck runs. I'm not really complaining about it. You don't have to like have everything mix and match. It's like, because then every deck at a certain point it starts to look like a GameStop.
Yeah, you kind of reach a point of absurdity, and I think they might be, if they haven't hit it yet, they're getting real close.
Yeah, I think next year is going to be kind of the make or break one between like trying to think what they all have. It's like I know they have The Hobbit coming out for next year. They have Star Trek. There's the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Marvel. I think that's all the mainstay sets that I can think of that they're doing. But it's still like, it's wild that they're doing this many sets. Because I think it's like 7 sets in total, if I remember right, next year. Or 6 or 7. But like 3 of them are in, oh, I think it's 6. I think the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle one is like a smaller thing. But it's still the fact that like there's so much product coming out for just in general with Magic, let alone the Universes Beyond, instead of like their own like IP stuff that they've made. I'm just kind of at a point where I'm like, dude, I'm tired. Like, I'm skipping Avatar. I'm skipping Spider-Man. I will see you guys in January when Eclipse comes out, because that's at least the Magic IP set I can get behind.
I just need a break. Give me a break.
Yeah, my wallet would love a break. And I got other decks I gotta finish it.
These darn first world problems we have.
Yeah.
All right, well, shall we pick up where we left off then last time?
Yeah, before it turns into me discussing card games again for the like 80th episode.
Well, we can have an episode dedicated to that again soon, but we gotta finish through this, and hopefully this one doesn't take too terribly long, but who knows? There's a lot of document here to go. So, if you're just joining us now, I would highly recommend that you listen to episode 47 first, because that's where we first kind of described these game key cards and a lot of the problems we have with them. And I think a lot of that knowledge will be useful to you before we get into today, because today I'm hoping we kind of finish out the rest of this document, because I want to talk about the approaches that different publishers have taken to the media, and I have comments from various developers that I could find in terms of just why they decided, this is the media that we decided to go with for this game. And I kind of have them separated into 3 categories. I have them the GOATs, the ones who are doing it absolutely right in my opinion, the very close to, the ones where I'm like, I don't understand your strategy at all, like what are you doing? And then the ones who are, in my opinion, getting it very much wrong completely.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we start with the ones who are doing it right? Let's stay positive first. Of course, the first big publisher who's still doing physical releases is Nintendo. But I feel like that has to have a very big, giant asterisk behind that, because this is their own platform.
Mm-hmm.
If they weren't doing physical releases on their own platform, like, that'd be kind of a problem, wouldn't it?
I think if they didn't do that, it would legitimately, like, kill Switch 2 sales, if I was being honest. I think, like, we talked about this when the Switch 2, like, came out, like, a few months ago. But like them making the decision to say, hey, we're going to be able to let you play Switch 1 games on a Switch 2. Brilliant move. Backward compatibility is severely underrated in today's market, and absolutely need to have more of that. Sony kind of already beat you on there, where like a lot of PS4 can be played on PS5, Xbox to a lesser degree with like, a lot of the 360 library could be played on, I think, Xbox One back in the day. I don't know if that's still the case nowadays with the Game Pass and whatnot, but like getting Switch 1 games on the Switch 2 was like, I feel like a very vital feature, because I think a lot more people are going to enjoy Switch 1 games if they own a Switch 2 in a sense, because at least then it's like, oh, you have updated hardware. That's the word I was looking for. You have updated hardware, so it'll probably make them run at least a little better in some capacities that you're looking for. Because there are definitely Switch 1 games that are like really good, or like they're enjoyable, but like they'd be better if it wasn't such a technical mess. Like, I am low-key a fan of Scarlet and Violet. When it came out and I was playing it, I'm like, I actually enjoyed what I was doing, and maybe it's just from years of being a Pokemon fan, but like playing that on Switch 2 is probably going to be a much needed like upgrade, where like it'll be noticeably different after the like choppiness of the mess that it was on Switch 1.
Yep, same thing I will think for The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. That game famously had problems like staying at a consistent 60 frames, and yeah, with the update on the Switch 2, I mean, it just performs so much better. So yeah, I mean, it's just a huge improvement. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like the new stuff, like I think you're right in that, like, why would I, like, if I had the option, I could buy Mario Kart World with the console and it's $50, or I could get it separately, but it's not really on the cartridge. That would, I would think that would be a death knell for that. I would say probably for the physical sales of that game, because they're not real physical sales. Like, the only people it wouldn't impact are the people who are already like digital only anyway, because there's a lot of people out here who just go straight up digital only for systems, and they have legitimate reasons to do so. Like, I think that might be something that we were missing a little bit last time, is, there are plenty of people who already go digital only, and so for this, it's this whole thing is kind of a nothing burger, but that still doesn't make the practice that we're looking at here good. We do, I will say, have some comment from Nintendo's president about the medium, because, as you can imagine, with all the controversy that was going on when people learned about these things, people are going to ask the leadership, like, well, why the heck are you doing this? So at Nintendo's 85th annual shareholders meeting this summer, one of the shareholders I saw asked about the key cards, saying that they'd seen comments about them being unappealing, and that if titles that are put on these key cards don't sell well, they're afraid that it's going to discourage, your third parties from supporting the Switch 2. And so what that ended up getting us was a little bit more reasoning from him about, like, well, here's why we decided to go with these. And I'm curious, what our reaction is going to be. Quote, "We introduced the game key card because game file sizes are larger on the Switch 2 compared to the Switch 1. We have various ways to distribute games on the Switch 2 and are working with our third-party partners to ensure their support for our platform," end quote. So, I mean, it's pretty much just saying, like, yeah, games are big, and 4K games especially are really big, and so we need to have another method to get these to people, because it might not be feasible for it to just fit on a cartridge.
And I think that's something that, like, I don't know if this is the thing for me with my age showing at this point, but like when I was younger, like, games were not nearly as big as they were, like, even 10 years ago in some cases. Like, when you put in stuff with like the NES and SNES and the PlayStation, as it's kind of gone on, games do just periodically get bigger because, simply put, you have better access to better hardware, which means that, like, you can be a little bit more elaborate with it. Now, is it saying that every game out there has to be, 150 gigabytes on day one? No, but like you can compress a game to be a smaller size. It's not necessarily like you have to have it be this behemoth of a game size wise. It's not like, like a Call of Duty or a Battlefield or a MLB The Show or whatever. Like, some of these games are insanely, like, a lot of gigabytes. And I think we're only, like, in the next probably couple of generations, we're going to be seeing it get bigger and bigger and bigger, where that becomes the normal. And that's what scares me more, is it's like, people think that you have to get bigger and bigger to be more elaborate. It's like, and then I'm looking at like the indie scene, for example, like so many games I'm seeing that are like smaller and have in some cases more to do. They know how to make a lot with a little. And that is the biggest thing I think a lot of these companies, I think, aren't putting two and two together on, is like, not every game has to be this bloated mess of, oh, I need to have 48, escort missions in my MMO or my RPG. It's, I need to just make sure that the game is understandable. Because, like, I saw kind of that same discourse a little bit with, between Ghost of Yotei and Ghost of Tsushima. Like, some people weren't happy with some of the side quests from Tsushima, but they said Ghost of Yotei was much more enjoyable because it's not trying to force all these kind of unnecessary missions on them. And even some...
trimmed away the fat.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the same thing with, like, certain games, too, like, that are still qualified as very good masterpieces. Like, the first Spider-Man game, like, on the PS4, I should say. Insomniac did a great job with it. Is there fat that could be trimmed? Very much. Like, there's very much some fat in that game that can definitely be cut out. Like, the Mary Jane missions are a lot of things people complain about from what I've heard. And I can't say I fully disagree. I'm not saying, like, one or two, whatever, but, like, I think there's, like, 3 or 4 missions between her and Miles pre-powers. So it's just kind of like, but why are we adding this just to pad it? It's like, I get you want to, like, do exposition and you want to kind of explore more of that, but, like, I would almost argue you're better off to just have that be a cutscene rather than this interactive moment where instead of, I'm now struggling for half an hour because Mary Jane just knocked over something that caused the guards to be alerted, and instead I can watch it take place. Actually, that brings up to a game I recently started playing that I think is doing it better. Have you heard of Dispatch?
Yes. I think you talked about it on here before, like it was in early access.
It just came out officially last week. So, but the thing is that it's being done in an episodic format, a la the Telltale games, because a lot of the developers at Ad Rock Studio are former Telltale, not execs, but like workers there. So they worked on like The Wolf Among Us. They worked on The Walking Dead. They did a lot of those games, and they were really good. And they are spearheading this with Dispatch. And it's kind of that same vein a little bit, where it's like, Dispatch has so far been giving me a very, very wonderful experience that is also interactive. But I also, and this was kind of a cool feature that I don't see a lot of people talking about, during the cutscenes, you have one of two options. Option A is you can watch them like cutscenes, and that's fine. It's your prerogative. You want to watch them as cutscenes, sure. And if you want to, you can make them interactive cutscenes. So kind of like the QTE type events that Telltale used to more or less have in their games. But they gave you the option if you wanted to just skip it entirely and just enjoy the story for what it is, and only, pick your dialogue when it was necessary. And then when you actually get into the gameplay, then you get into the gameplay. I don't see a lot of, companies really doing that, where it's like, it gives you a choice if you want a little extra, but if you don't want it, you can just completely remove it entirely. And I'm like, that's really cool. It's such a simple idea too. Like, you would think that more companies would like really consider that. It's like, no, they want to make sure that people are always doing something. I mean, unless you're Hideo Kojima and playing Metal Gear Solid 4 and getting a 2.5-hour movie at some point.
It reminds me of the story modes in the newer Ace Attorney collections, right? You can choose, do you want to actually play the game, or do you just want to see the story? Like, we can play the game out for you if you just want to see the story, but like, it's your choice. You can still play the game just like it came out back in, for whichever game you're playing, and figure it out all yourself. But it's still a good option for those people who really are just like, I just want to experience a good story, you know?
Oh, yeah.
My only issue, I think, with some of the stuff you're talking about is like, I'm thinking about, I feel like I'm getting a little bit of deja vu. And in this case, it's certainly way more justifiable than with what I'm about to bring up. But do you remember the 5th generation of consoles? That'd be the original PlayStation and the Sega Saturn and the Nintendo 64. So games could be way bigger on the PS1 because they were on this media called a CD, whereas on the N64, because they were on cartridges, they could not be nearly as big. Mm-hmm. So I think there is also something to be said for, like, okay, is this really the proper solution? Because, like, and in this case, I'm actually more putting it on the devs here, right? Like, obviously, we understand you want to make big 4K games, but if that's preventing you from putting it on the media, is that something worth considering? Is it worth considering, like you said, maybe we need to compress some of this stuff? Maybe it ends up becoming a more justifiable instance of having part of the game on the cartridge and part of the game on that has to be downloaded. I still wouldn't like that practice, but maybe it becomes more justifiable if it's really that necessary. But like, I think what I'm kind of getting out of this comment here is this theme of like the technology and the desires of the studios sort of butting heads, right? And it starts making you ask questions about like, okay, do we need to have 4K games? Like, there does become a point where, you know, the eye can't really perceive something that's in too terribly much more detail. So it's like, how much does a game like, just to throw something out there that's different, how much does a game like Sonic X Shadow Generations benefit from being in 4K compared to another game? Like, if it could be a smaller game that fit on the media, but it wasn't in 4K, it was only in 1440p, ooh, would that be the worst thing? On the other hand, it's also legitimate to be like, if the hardware can output 4K and the game can be made in 4K and still work on the hardware, maybe it becomes a legitimate like thought to say, no, I don't care if it is or isn't on the media. That's what I want out of the game. So that's kind of an example of something that I was thinking about last time when I'm like, well, when I was doing the research, it was sort of changing my opinion on it, because it's like I could see both arguments for that as someone who wants the game on the media, but also as someone who's like, but I also want the best play experience I can get. Like, this isn't a situation where, you know, the hardware just can't output something like that, so I'm not getting it. This is a situation where it's there, but it's limited by the media more than the system itself. Before we leave the subject of Nintendo, though, I also want to add, I found a comment that could also play another key reason as to why key cards are being made. So a comment from the president of Kios Incorporated. They're apparently a game consultancy business in Japan. They told Bloomberg that publishers are liking the new medium of key cards because they say it makes selling physical games cheaper. With this quote, software publishers are thanking Nintendo as they face rising costs to make games. That's from their president, Kyoko Kino.
Which I can get behind to an extent on that, but it's like, I still think it, like they're saying, like, I want to make sure I'm saying, like, understanding this right. They're basically saying, like, the key cards are helpful to them as a way to get the product out for them without physical, quote unquote, costs that might be more expensive for not a first party company. Is that right?
Yeah, they're basically saying, hey, we can still get this game out to retail, but it's cheaper to do so than if we put it on an actual cartridge.
And I get that to an extent too, but I think the other thing too is it's like, how badly do you want something to be physical then? Like, you know what I mean? I understand if you want it physical as a key card, like, so that people can at least have something to it, but like, I feel like you can reduce costs even more if you just say it's going to be a digital download only thing or something, or like, down the road, if people demand it enough, like, like the limited run game situation where they'll make physical copies for a limited time. I understand it to a degree. I don't know. It kind of is just a messy argument on both sides, no matter what way you slice it. Because it's like, kind of going back to what I was saying, I think in the last episode, it's like it's causing problems that weren't necessarily a problem. Like, you made your own problem now, and now you have to figure out a solution to it. So I think in the case for like some of these, software developers, oh, you're going to, put out key cards. That's great. I could just put it on digital and in the eShop or on Steam, and that will work just as fine, where I don't have to have those extra costs now, even if Nintendo is maybe footing the bill or whatever they're doing with it. But like I said, I get it to an extent. I don't know if I fully agree with it, though.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because so I kind of got, and I did this terrible thing and started debating someone on the internet.
You really gotta stop doing that. I keep telling
you.
Yeah,
I really should stop doing that. I haven't posted anything on any of I don't have any of these accounts linked to here just because I like keeping all this stuff separate. But anyway, I remember kind of saying that exact sort of idea out on a comment about something like that, and the counterpoint that person gave to me is a retail space can be really important for some of these games to be sold in, right? Like, in some ways it'll be easier to sell someone a game if they just walk by and they see it on the shelf, because if they just release it as a download, there's no opportunity for that. You have to actively, in a lot of times, go out of your way on, a digital storefront. And I mean, it's especially bad in the Switch's case, because there is a lot of shovelware on there.
Shovelware.
Yeah, although I will say on the Switch 2 version of the eShop, they've been doing better about like promoting like, here are the big new releases, and like, here's stuff that we think you will like that isn't on the Switch ones. But, you think about like, you've got two different kinds of people. You have someone who is going out of their way to find a game like Final Fantasy VII Remake, right? They know they're going to want to play that. So that's easy for them to download the game. Now, if you're someone who, grew up in the 90s and maybe really liked Final Fantasy VII, but you hadn't, you're not plugged into video games as much today, then you see it on the shelf and you're like, they remade this game and I can buy it on my new system. That could become an impulse purchase for you.
Like the OG Tomb Raiders that apparently are on PS5 now. Like, there is a physical disc of that, which I just saw. One of the stores kind of in my area are actually selling, and I'm like, huh, okay.
Right.
I didn't even know that was a thing. All right.
Right. And now it's on your radar. I mean, sure, maybe you could have gone to the PlayStation store and happened to find out about that on there. But if you're someone who grew up with Tomb Raider and you're like, oh man, it's like they remade it. I can have it on my PlayStation 5 now that I otherwise only use to play Madden and COD or whatever. Like, that could be the difference between that game selling or not. And I'm torn on that second point there, because I think that's reasonable. As a business, you want to sell as many copies as you can. So I think it's totally fair to be like, hey, we want to have a version of our game at retail. On the other hand, it creates this problematic split here, because that raises the question, okay, so is this publisher making this game in the keycard format because they have legitimate technical reasons for doing so? Or are they doing it because they're cheap? They don't want to shell out the money to put it on an actual physical cartridge, because reportedly these cartridges are not cheap, and we will get into that later in this process. So, I don't mind, in theory, rewarding the publishers who are making the choice because they have a legitimate reason to do so. But the ones who are just doing it because they want to save a quick buck, I don't really want to reward them, you know?
Right.
Looking at another one of the amazing publishers we have here, though, is the USA division of Marvelous. And it's actually not that big a surprise that they're knocking it out of the park because they've been stalwarts in physical games for a long time. Like, I remember with the 3DS, right? It was like 2011, 2012. You might see some games that have manuals in there, and then by the time you hit 2013, 2014, it was all the generic, here's how you look at the e-manual on your console. It's like, oh, this is lame. But even up to like 2016, 2017, any physical releases that Marvelous would have, they would still have real manuals with their games.
I think that's something that like we don't talk a lot about when it comes to like the whole debacle when it comes to physical media is like how much stuff is also being cut out job-wise. Kind of like what you said, like they have physical manuals in their games. That's like how many printing jobs that probably are now completely removed for all these physical copies that don't come with those anymore. And like they used to be like, you know, decently sized manuals. Like some of them, even like in later generations when they were still a real big thing, like they get skinnier and skinnier, but it was like there's still some meat to it. But like nowadays, it's like you're lucky if you get like a folded piece of paper that says manual on it written in like Sharpie and call it good.
It's becoming a luxury for your game to have a manual with it, whereas it's like every single game pre like 2010, we'll say, had to have a manual with it.
Yeah.
Like, but my point is like they've been long known for doing it right, so it's no surprise to me that they're doing it well. So apparently the U.S. division of Marvelous, the CEO there, he'd kind of talked about with the folks in Japan, because Marvelous is a Japan company first and foremost. So it's like, well, how do they want to go with physical releases? And so while they do have the slight disappointment that like they have an upcharge for Switch 2 edition games, that also comes with the benefit that every Marvelous release so far on the Switch 2 has been physical, including ones that in Japan were digital. So like Marvelous USA released the sequel to Daemon X Machina. Remember that game? And in the West, it's physical. Or at least in the US, it's physical. In Japan, it's a key card. And that's because the CEO here was like, no, I think it's better for us to have it be physical. So I consider that to be a major feather in their cap. Need we even mention CD Projekt Red? They were pretty famous at the outset of this whole thing for being like, yeah, Cyberpunk's going to be on the cartridge. So we don't really know what's going to happen for physical releases for them in the future, because I don't know that they have much down the pike right now for the Switch 2. But I mean, Cyberpunk 2077 in general is just like, what a journey that game has had.
That and No Man's Sky are like two of the biggest cautionary tales when it comes to releasing too early, I think.
Those are both games where it's like they really had major downs, and then they've had like major ups. Like they're fascinating tales in general.
They were the like ugly kids in middle school that got picked on and then had the glow up of the century, and now everybody thinks they're hot.
Mm-hmm. I also want to give kudos to one publisher that, man, speaking of having major downs and major ups, Atari, right? So Atari, there could be a whole also rabbit hole with Atari, modern Atari, but they're in part in charge with publishing the Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection because they own Digital Eclipse now. And so they have a rare W right now, and that Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection is also going to be a complete physical. So that's a big plus. And then one that I know you'll be very excited about, Supergiant Games with Hades 2. Hades 2 is a proper Switch 2 physical game. And better yet, it is a Switch 2 edition, and so because of that, so the way the Switch 2 editions work is apparently a little bit weird, but I like it in that it is the actual Switch 1 game but they also have the Switch 2 enhancements on the cartridge. So, like, you could go and buy the Switch 2 edition and still play it in your original Switch just fine.
That's actually really impressive. I've never heard quite literally compatible backwards at that point.
A forwards compatible game?
Yeah. Is that what we call it?
I guess. I mean, I'm just saying it'd be like the perfect case for you in that it's like, you're a big Hades fan, so it's like if you were to get a physical version of that, that's what I would go for, because it's like, well, I can play it now, and then by the time I get into the new hardware, then it just keeps working. It's the same copy. I don't need to buy a new one.
Coincidentally, speaking of Hades too, I want to touch on this before I forget about it. There was like a whole thing about like the quote unquote controversial ending to Hades 2, and Supergiant changed the ending quite literally for fans like who are mad at how it ended.
That just reminds me of like the first Sonic movie.
Quite literally.
Although on a smaller scale.
Well, I don't know. So I haven't played Hades 2 yet, but I did hear about this recently where like, I guess there were a lot of people who were mad at like what the quote unquote ending is. And Supergiant heard all the criticisms and they were like, we hear you. We're changing the ending. I don't know what the full scope of the ending is. I think what I'm going to do is at some point when I beat Hades 2, I'll look up what the original ending is just to see what like points that fans were making. Not saying if they're right or wrong, I can't judge on it, but like Supergiant is just a very good company in general. Like they need to be studied at how to run a proper video game company, just flat out, where it's like they aren't taking this and saying like, oh, well, these people don't clearly know what the ending's about. It's like, okay, we hear you. We may have not put two and two together when this was all being done and XYZ. I mean, it's a small thing at the end of the day, like to complain about an ending, because everyone I've heard talk about it so far has said it's like one of the greatest games they've played this year. Like, I don't know if it's in Game of the Year contention, but it is definitely high up there. It's like top 10 of the year, at least.
Well, and to your point here, too, notice, okay, Supergiant, somehow this indie dev can afford to have their game be on the media, but big AAA devs and publishers can't.
Yeah.
Make that make sense, right? That's why I'm saying it's like there starts to become a legitimate question of like, okay, how many of you are going with this method just because you want to save a quick buck and this doesn't have anything, like there's no legitimate reason for this. Like if they can do it, like why can't someone else do it? A publisher that I'm putting in the very close with legitimate reasons as well to like being perfect on this, Level 5. When was the last time you thought about Level 5?
I haven't, if I'm being completely honest.
Well, and there's good reason for that, actually, that we'll kind of dig into a little bit here. I think they've done, so far, a pretty good job on their Switch 2 stuff. They have one game that's already out, two that are planned. One of the launch titles was Fantasy Life I, which is the sequel to a 3DS game just called Fantasy Life. It's basically like if you took Animal Crossing, but it was also an RPG. It's pretty sweet. Anyway, so Fantasy Life I came out as a Switch 2 edition, because it was already out for a little bit on Switch 1, PS5, Xbox, all that stuff. And I want to give them major kudos on their upgrade pack because, you've got other studios where they're like, it's $10, it's $20. They're charging a mere $2.59 for their Switch 2 upgrade.
That's actually really, really impressive.
Like, they are keeping it super duper cheap. And the game has a proper physical release in Japan. It doesn't have a physical release at all in the West, so, that's okay, but Level 5's kind of been in some weird, financial stuff for the last few years that they've been digging themselves out of, so I can give them a pass on not having a proper Western release, but it's I just think that's really cool to just basically say, yeah, we know this isn't very much, so let's make it cheap. They could make it free. There are other publishers that have made their upgrades free, I don't think this game has a physical version at all, but Hollow Knight Silksong, its upgrade for the Switch 2 edition is free. So, that one you can just get without any issue whatsoever. But the reason I'm putting Level 5 in this close to GOAT status here is because I don't know quite yet what's going on with their future releases. The big one for me being the next Professor Layton game. It's going to be on both systems. I'm assuming they're going to take the same approach with it, and with their, because they have this soccer series, Inazuma 11. It looks like that game, from what I was seeing in my research, that is going to have a 300 yen upgrade pack, which is the same price that the Fantasy Life I upgrade pack was. So presumably we can expect when that game comes out, again, it's going to be like a couple dollars, and that's about it. So big kudos to them for like sticking with keeping things physical, just because like it's the right way, I would argue, to release these, to at least have it as the option. Like, that's kind of, I think that's maybe where this all boils down to, is it's like, it'd be nice to have the option, even if you're someone who just wants to download it, you're not affected by this at all. And if you're someone who likes to have the actual physical thing, like, that should be out there. All right, now we get to the real interesting ones. And this is in the group that I've classified as, what are you doing? Because I've seen games from these publishers. It's like, yeah, we have an upgrade and it's free. But that one's $10. And that one, you can't have an upgrade. It's only a key card. Yeah. And so, like, as a consumer, I look at that and I'm like, what? Why? What is the logic for that one being free and that one being a key card and this last one is an upgrade but it's paid? Like, just make this make sense for me. And so in this research, I got a little bit more clarity on some of this stuff. And there, again, is good and bad stuff. So I have 3 here. I have Bandai Namco, Sega, and good old Square Enix. Which one would you want to start with here, you think?
Might as well just start from the top down here.
All right. So Bandai Namco. I think, on the whole, they're sitting a little bit more pretty in terms of how they're doing their releases. So, like, the very first game that came out for them was Shadow Labyrinth. That's that, like, Pac-Man Metroidvania.
That really dark one?
It's weird. It's bizarre.
Yeah.
It has a physical Switch 1 release. Perfect. Upgrade pack, free. Awesome. In Japan, you can buy the Switch 2 edition at retail, but it comes in the form of a code in a box. Now, I want you to take note of that information, okay? Write that down. This will be an important nugget of information for later, that Shadow Labyrinth Switch 2 edition's physical is a code in a box. I'd really prefer a proper physical like Level 5's done it. Like, I would have preferred the Shadow Labyrinth Switch 2 edition was a cartridge. But to me, this is like the next best thing, because if you want a physical, you can still buy the Switch 1 version, and then all you're downloading is like the visual upgrades. And to me, that's a perfectly fine compromise. Especially because it's free. Like, if it were paid, it would be like, okay, that's still kind of sucky, but, it is what it is. It looked like the same was going to be true for Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, but I've seen keycard listings for that game pop up, so I don't think it is going to be the case that Dragon Ball Sparking Zero follows the Shadow Labyrinth path here. Based on like evidence on the European site for the game, that's kind of how it looked, but that doesn't seem like how it's worked out in reality. Where Bandai Namco starts getting in trouble is with, of all games, Tamagotchi Plaza. Because that follows the same approach as Shadow Labyrinth, except you have to pay $10 for the upgrade.
Jeez.
Like, but why? I don't. It doesn't make sense, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Like, what is so different about these two games that, like, one of these can be free and the other one can't be? I will say on the plus side for Tamagotchi Plaza, it doesn't have a Western physical release, but the game is truly physical in Japan. So if you're someone who just has to have that game and has to have it on a cartridge, you can still import it and it'll be just the same.
You're right. I'll get right on it.
Yeah, I can totally see either of us being huge Tamagotchi Plaza fans here.
I feel like I was the only 90s kid who did not have a Tamagotchi at all.
No?
Not that I can remember. I don't remember getting one at least.
Do you have any other, like, pet taking care of little games like that?
Oh, we had like Nintendogs on the DS, but that was about the extent of what I can remember that we had anything remotely like that. Like we had a couple of the Nintendogs games like when we got DSs for Christmas, I remember, but that's the extent I think we ever had two pets.
Yeah, but
Like,
those aren't the same as Tamagotchi because they can't die.
no, they just run away because you didn't feed them because you didn't play for 6 weeks or whatever it was.
Well, that's sad.
Well, I'm being very hyperbolic on a lot of this, but like I genuinely don't remember how most of those games played. Those were more my sister's. I was never like a big, like I think the closest thing I have to that is like the version that they have in Dave the Diver. That's like the closest thing I could think. The little like mobile app game that they have where you have to basically treat it like a Tamagotchi. That's basically it.
Yeah, it's still something. To end off the Namco train here, to me, the two biggest disappointments with this, Little Nightmares 3, key card only. Now, if I recall, I do believe Little Nightmares 3 is only a Switch 2 release, so I want to make sure. No, it is on both. So, yeah, the fact that there's no upgrade and they went with the key card makes me quite disappointed with that. But the one that's like way more critical and sad for me, Pac-Man World 2 Repack. Oh, I want to play that game because Pac-Man World 2, the original, is like one of my childhood games. I had the PS2 version of that game, not the GameCube version, which I'm sure may surprise some people, but that is like one of my PlayStation 2 key memories is that game because it is very good.
So you
I would love to play.
You have it as a key memory, not a key card.
Yeah, exactly. It's a key memory. It's a phenomenal game. And of course, I would love to play the brand new version, but basically, I'm stuck with two options here right now. I can get the Switch 1 version, and it's on the cartridge, but visually and performance-wise, it is the absolute worst version. At least with Pac-Man the World 1, the repack of that came out a few years ago, it had a performance mode that, yes, also made the game look a little bit even worse still, but it was in 60 frames, and that's really what I want here. That isn't even an option on the Switch 1 version of World 2. But for the Switch 2 version, it's like, okay, if I want it physical, it's a key card. So it's like, oh, basically I have to give up. Do I want it to look worse, but have it on the media, or have it on the, not have it on the media and have it actually perform up to the standards that this console should be putting out? And to me, that's a really crappy situation. Like, what the heck? To me, it should have just been a slam dunk to have an upgrade pack, but we'll get more into why that might not have been the case shortly. And now we have Sega. They have only had one game that just barely got them across into this tier. I was very close to putting them into the bottom tier right now of like, you guys are doing this terribly. But they have one game that is their saving grace. And the other sad thing related to that is like, I think Sega's output on the Switch 2 has been pretty good so far. They've already got... when I wrote this, it was 4 games out. I think it's 5 now, at least. Like, they've got Sonic X Shadow Generations, Puyo Puyo Tetris 2S, Raito Remastered, which is technically an Atlas game, but, Sega owns Atlas. And now for sure, they've got Persona 3 Reload out, and I think they have 2 Point Museum out as well now, too. But all those games I've listed so far are all key cards. Boo. Which is especially disappointing for Sonic X Shadow Generations and Puyo Puyo Tetris 2S, and Raito Remastered, because those all have Switch 1 versions. So the fact that they couldn't have upgrades really sucks.
Mm-hmm.
The only game that I know of so far that will have a proper physical release is eventually Sonic Racing Cross Worlds. Better than nothing, but like... I don't get it. I don't understand. Also, a detail that I did like on the Crossroads thing, I've noted at various points it's hard to like get some information about some of these platforms, or at least like the media itself, because companies like to be very opaque and not reveal information. In the FAQ for that game, Sega lists that the capacity of the card is 64 gigabytes. There are a lot of places where that was alleged. It's like, it looks like these are 64 gigabyte cards. That was the one place where I've seen where they cite it. So that's a plus. Any comments on Sega here? I don't want to totally dominate this if I don't have to.
I mean, Sega's kind of got some thinking to do, I feel like. Do not get me wrong, Sega's been killing it with the games lately, but like the handling of physical media as a whole has been questionable at best. Like, I am half expecting at this point, like, we're going from key cards to key discs for like the PS6 or Xbox, whatever after that. Like, pick a lane. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, don't get ahead of us yet. We haven't gotten to the last part of this podcast yet, because we will talk about how other platforms factor into this.
Oh, good. Just what I need to be angrier.
Square Enix. Now, I'm more of a Dragon Quest person, and it is making me incredibly sad, the state of Dragon Quest on the Switch 2, because Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D isn't getting Switch 2 Edition, but it did get a free update that takes advantage of the Switch 2 hardware. But then there's a bunch of other games that have separate releases, like Octopath Zero, separate release, no upgrade. But then there's Final Fantasy Tactics. That game has a Switch 2 Edition, and it's free, at least to upgrade to that. There's no physical release of the Switch 2 Edition in the West, though. Just the Switch 1 version has a physical release, and the upgrade pack is a free download.
Such a weird... I don't know how to feel right now.
It will make sense shortly, because remember that nugget of info that I'm having you hold on to. It's going to become really, really relevant soon. It is related to Square Enix specifically for that game. Then there's Romancing Saga 2. That has a Switch 2 edition, and it costs $10 to upgrade to that. Why? I don't know. I don't know why that one is $10, but the way more popular Final Fantasy Tactics is free.
I mean, I'm okay right now. I got it for PS5, so that one's not really hitting me hard.
And then we have Bravely Default, the remake, and Final Fantasy VII. Those are just straight up key cards, so it's tough cookies there. But we have some comment from some of the developers on these games that I think will perhaps shed some light on some of these decisions. So, for example, Naoki Hamaguchi, he is the director of Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, and he claims that it is load times that are the culprit for a lot of these big-time games getting keycards. Quote, I think perhaps the biggest issue for developers, certainly for people like us who make high-end HD games, is the loading speed, because you compare that to the solid-state drive and the speed you can get from loading from that. It just has to be, that's the way the media works physically. So that's the bigger issue, really, in terms of making games, making high-end games for the Switch 2 and what it allows, obviously. By doing a semi-download version of the game, you can then use the SSD and rely on that for smoother loading, end quote. Now, we'll dig into this a little bit further down when I get into a Western dev, because he also had a thread that dug up even more useful information on that, but that's another angle now that we need to consider in terms of like, why are they making these decisions, is because they would argue that the load times off of the cartridge are too slow. And this isn't just something that's actually made up. Like, we have seen this over the years. Like, there are people who've done comparison videos of like, here's what it's like. Here are the load times for Breath of the Wild on the Wii U versus the downloaded version of the Switch versus off the cartridge. And by far and away, the fastest loading version for that game, and really for a lot of these games in general, has been off the system memory. But even off the SD card is still faster than off of the cartridge itself. So this is not actually just made up. There is actual legitimacy to that argument. And now, finally, we have reached that nugget of information I wanted you to keep in mind all the way back from the Oh man, was it from the Bandai Namco situation where it's like, why is Shadow Labyrinth a code in a box? And why is Final Fantasy Tactics here a code in a box? Because we have comment from Shoichi Matsuzawa, who is the director of the Final Fantasy Tactics remake. Because he specifically talked about the game's release strategy. I saw this on a Philippines outlet called One More Game, but I don't know if they're the specific group that first got these comments or if they're just republishing them from somewhere else, but I don't know. What I liked about it, though, is I think it's kind of bringing into light some logic to the chaos that we've seen, specifically with Square Enix's releases. He says, quote, "We wanted to ensure an upgrade path for players moving from Switch 1 to Switch 2. We don't have availability to go with a keycard, and production costs for cartridges are higher. We wanted to deliver a physical version of the Switch 2, but when we take all that into account, the option we had to go with was a download code." End quote. So clearly that comment, so like the question he was responding to was like, hey, why is the Switch 2 version of Final Fantasy Tactics, why is it a code in a box? But it's that comment about availability that tipped me off here, that got me to be like, that is interesting, isn't it? So I did a little bit more digging, and I found on Blue Sky this user called Nintendo Patents Watch. And so based on what that user's seen, it looks like publishers are basically given two options for Switch 2 releases when it also has a Switch 1 version. If you're doing a Switch 2 edition, it can be offered only in the form of a physical cartridge or as a code in a box. And the reason for that, I'm sure, has to do with how the Switch 2 edition, if it's on the cartridge, can still be played in the Switch 1 console, right? Otherwise, if you go with a code in a box, then you can still download it, and then it should be just there for later, right? Otherwise, let's say a publisher wants to go with the approach like Little Nightmares 3 had, or Pac-Man World 2 Repack did. If they want it to be a separate like release, and it's not a Switch 2 edition, then they have the option of either having it be proper physical, code in a box, or key card. If you want to go with the key card, you cannot offer an upgrade from the Switch 1. That's where this all comes together.
That feels weirdly scummy. I don't know why, but maybe I'm just like, the way it's like described as a whole feels off. You know what I mean?
Yes. I think from Nintendo's end, it makes sense. I think from the third party's end, it's really kind of ridiculous because, you know, I don't think many of us are unreasonable here, right? I think there are a lot of us, and I would include myself in this, who would be perfectly accepting of like, okay, if you want to get the Switch 2 edition of the game, but the only difference is like it's in the red box with the different artwork, but it's a code in a box, that's fine. But I can still get the Switch 1 version where the whole game is on the cartridge and all I have to download is like improved textures or whatever. Like, to me, that would be acceptable. Because the people who are going to buy the code in a box, they know that going in. It's going to say it on the box. It's like, they don't have any qualms with it. So I understand the logic of like, we can't have a key card be an offering for that because then it's not the same format. It's not compatible with the original Switch like it should be. But I just don't get, like, if you're a third-party publisher, why would you go out of your way to choose, yeah, we're going to make this a key card release when that option is there for you, you know?
Mm-hmm. No, 100% agree on that. That just...
I mean, ideally, it would just be physical across the board. Like, just put it on the cartridge. Like, just go with that. But I think, you know, for in this place, like, let's say price concerns are there in terms of publishing these on a real cartridge. Like, if that's there, and we should be able to dig into that a little bit too, like, you know, that's fine. But you've got a good alternative that I think would get you. It wouldn't get you the great press you'd get by being the the game, having the game on the media, but it'd still be better than the alternative.
Before we continue, I think I probably should raise a note that we're probably getting closest to being done. So what I'm thinking is we'll finish the last bits of like the companies, and then we'll probably have to cut that episode here before it gets way too long, because we're pushing like what, an hour and a half now, give or take?
Yeah, we're at an hour and a half in the recording, but we're at the very end here of the like what are you doing ones, and then key card only should be relatively short here, I think. But yeah, just kind of finishing off the bit here on Square Enix. Like I said, I don't get it. I appreciate getting this information. Like, I don't know that Shoichi Matsuzawa was really thinking that much about, like, when he made the comment that this would be so enlightening, but I'm glad that it was able to put this into context, because now it's making me think about, like, okay, for those ones where it's very clear that they just have 2 editions and, they're not doing the upgrade for some really strange, weird reason, those are ones I should probably just go straight up download for. Like, I want to play Pac-Man World 2 Repack, but why, unless there's a really, really absolutely amazing deal over Black Friday coming up here, I'm probably going to download the game. Because it doesn't make sense. There's no good reason for them to have gone with a key card over an upgrade. I mean, again, it would suck to have it be a code in a box, but it's like, I think the people who are getting that at that point know what they're getting into. So I don't feel nearly as bad about that. So let's get into the key card only bit, because this will also hopefully shine a little bit more light too on why some folks are going with the keycard only. And I've seen keycard only has been the case for a lot of Western publishers, like big time Western publishers, but I've seen a lot of more little time Western publishers actually have been going proper digital only. Like, Madden NFL 26, that's got to be a keycard. The newly revealed, like, there's some other new Bluey game that was announced, and that's going to be on the cartridge. That could be on the cartridge. And Madden, no. Why would that be on the cartridge?
Yeah, it's not like they've been giving us the same game how many years.
Fair, but my point is EA clearly can't afford it, but this little Western publisher, like, they can.
Yeah, this little Western publisher, EA.
Yeah, EA, they don't have the money for that.
No, because they definitely don't have the money for the games. That much is for sure.
Especially with all that Saudi money they just got having been bought out, they definitely can't afford it. But that could be a whole other can of worms. But yeah, for like the Western publishers, I don't think it's really worth going over too many of them individually, because like there's a lot of them, and so far a lot of the big ones that I've seen have gone with keycards. I do want to give a shout out to Warner Brothers in the case of Hogwarts Legacy, because they do offer an upgrade for the Switch 2 version, so they do have that going for them. But it's kind of muted anyway, because most of the game for the Switch 1 version, you had to download it. Like, they had a little teeny bit on the cartridge, but the rest of it had to be downloaded, so it's like, faint praise for that. Like, it's better than
golf clap.
Yeah, a golf clap. Like, kudos for doing the Switch 2 version right, but you still had an overall bad release option for this platform on the whole. There's also a few Japanese publishers that have had only like a release or two so far, with the physicals only being key cards, like Spike Chunsoft did No Sleep for Kaname Date. Apparently it's related to AI. The Somnium Files, that's keycard only. Koei Tecmo has Wild Hearts S and Nobunaga's Ambition Awakening, that is keycard only. And then, yeah, Konami has Survival Kids and Suikoden 1 and 2 HD. Those are also keycard only. I will give them a little teeny tiny bit of leniency on Survival Kids, because to me that is like clear. That would have been a digital only game otherwise. But yeah, for Konami, those are also Japan only. One of the Western publishers I did want to highlight, look at them coming up again. It's Ubisoft. But in this...
Oh, sorry. Was that the outside voice? Damn.
Yeah. So Ubisoft is interesting, not because like they've had any physical releases yet, but because one of the developers who worked on the studio's Snowdrop engine, Rob Banton, sort of illuminated why he thinks Ubisoft went with a keycard release for Star Wars Outlaws, and this might sound fairly familiar. He says it was for technical reasons. Quote, Snowdrop relies heavily on disk streaming for its open-world environments, and we found the Switch 2 cards, as in the physical games, simply didn't give the performance we needed at the quality target we were going for. I don't recall the cost of the cards ever entering the discussion, probably because it was moot. I think if we'd designed a game for the Switch 2 from the ground up, it might have been different. As it was, we'd built a game around the SSDs of the initial target platforms, and then the Switch 2 came along a while later. In this case, I think our leadership made the right call. End quote. I'm going to put an asterisk by this quote regardless, because given Ubisoft's track record, remember episode 44, Stop Killing Games? I do think it's fair to be skeptical of his statement. Like, he's probably telling the truth. He's probably actually saying what actually happened, but it's very hard to divorce all the bad stuff that's happened by Ubisoft from any decisions like this, you know? I will add, though, however, in the thread that Banton commented on this from, we also got more chiming in from Nintendo Patents Watch, because they noticed that based on the patents for the physical Switch 2 games, their data transfer speed is 400 megabytes per second. That's the eMMC standard. And for those of you out there, if all this technical info is going over your head, don't worry. It makes no sense to me either. I don't think either of us are electrical engineers or know any, you know,
those are big words. Too
like
bad
this.
I'm not reading them.
Right. It's just, it's like, woo, it's not our area of expertise. But like the long story short here is this tracks with the comments on the load times, right? Mm-hmm. A game on the storage runs fast. Then off micro SD card is a little bit slower, but still faster. Then the physical game is the slowest. So it would stand to reason in Banton's comments here that it's true. Of course, it also happened to coincide with how this allows publishers to cheap out. And, you know, part of the problem with this, and we'll have to see then how this goes with future releases, because this could end up either continuing to be a problem or this could end up being that they sort of figure this out later. But it means like third-party devs are like, when they're building these games, they're building them with the specifications of like the PS5 and the Series X and PCs in mind, in that they have solid-state drives, and that's what they're loading game content off of. They're not loading game content off of a cartridge. They're not going based on that speed. So for them, they want to prioritize making the Switch 2 version be in line with those versions. They want those load times to be like that, which I think is understandable. But yeah, that kind of makes a big question, like, if this is a game that has a PS4 and an Xbox One version or like a Switch 1 version, like, what's the excuse there then? Because they're not targeting SSDs, because that's not the kind of drives that those systems have. Now, I could also see us veering off into a discussion and making this even way longer. I'm like, well, why didn't Nintendo go with a faster transfer speed media for their cartridges? Like, why are they going with this thing where it's only 400 megabytes per second?
But I think I can answer that very quickly. We don't know how that works. We're not going to pretend we're going to be experts on this. We will let them know our opinions when we know what the hell they're talking about.
That's fair, but I think realistically there's only three options if I had to take a stab in the dark in this. You could go the faster one, but it's probably more expensive. Probably. And people are already complaining with how expensive things are with the system, right? Would you rather have Mario Kart World be $100 and it loads faster, or are you okay with a slightly longer load time and having it still be too expensive at $80.
I mean, you make a fair point.
Yeah, like the technology could be there, but it's more expensive, and that's a trade-off, right? The cost to make the cartridges as it stands, according to a comment from Digital Foundry's own John Lindemann, he claims a Switch 2 cartridge right now costs $23 to make, which is a lot compared to any disc format out there. I would love to know where he's actually getting that info from, because he didn't have any like source that he's attributing that to. But I mean, he knows his stuff, so I don't necessarily doubt him on that. I just want to have something to attribute it to. The other option, if it's not the case that the technology exists but it's more expensive, then it'd be the opposite, which is the technology just doesn't exist. This is the fastest speed, and so we're kind of limited there. The other option I could see is maybe the technology is there, but it would be in some sort of like other physical shape, and so then the Switch 2 wouldn't have been backwards compatible with Switch 1 games. But I don't know. There could be any other litany of reasons, because like you said, we are not experts. Mm-hmm. And then we could go into a long diatribe on this too, but Capcom right now is the one Japanese publisher that I highlighted that has been sucking so far, because every release of theirs, to my knowledge, has been a keycard so far, and every release that is planned so far, to my knowledge, is a keycard. Street Fighter 6, bunch of the Resident Evils. It's just disappointing. But we did get comment from Resident Evil Requiem, that's Resident Evil 9 for you, that game's director, Koshi Nakanishi, and he just tossed a nice bombshell in this entire thing, in how we've been finding, like, oh, here's all these kind of, like, more understandable reasons. He says, quote, "It's not a development decision for us, it's more of a sales strategy decision," end quote.
Oh no, he said it with the outside voice.
Points for honesty, okay? I appreciate the honesty, but here's what I get from that. To me, that makes it sound like Resident Evil Requiem could perfectly run fine off of a regular cartridge, but Capcom's cheaping out. Maybe it does have a legitimate technical reason. Maybe it really does. But that is like major foot in the mouth kind of comment if I ever read one.
I think the big thing is that like they are at least consistent with their strategy, as the quote put it out there. I can understand if you want to save a few bucks, but like especially with like how Capcom had been killing it for a while, like in the past like couple years or whatever it was, this is a very big rock to trip on right before the finish line, I think. I don't know how to phrase it necessarily the right way. It's coming in my head, but like there's definitely this thing where like I can understand the sales strategy comment, and I don't mean this is a bad thing. I get where he's coming from. But I also think that it's like we've had how many generations of physical media, and the death of physical media turning into digital media, becoming more and more like apparent every day, has really started to kind of raise my eyebrows at like, okay, so are you actually trying to make good products as a video game company, or are you just trying to line your pockets? Because like I'm seeing this more and more in certain companies, like how you were describing it, where like right. Capcom has pretty much been nothing but like it's either digital or keycard, and nothing more than that. And I am not going to say like if it's 100% a bad thing or what, but it's like you are also a big probably billion-dollar company at this point. I don't know how much their net worth is offhand, but you can't tell me that you can't at least be giving some options out there. It's like, and I say this as slightly as a hypocrite of how many games I own on Steam. I have like over 400 or whatever it is now. But like, I will buy physical if I can. I mean, I own 3 copies of Hades, and one of them is physical. I bought it on Switch 1, I bought it on Steam, and I bought it physical on PS4. And I only did that because I wanted it physical at some point. And I got it, and I'm happy with it. Have I played it on the PS4? No. I played it on the other 2, but that's not the point. But, like, honestly, like, I give Capcom at least a little bit of credit, like how you said. It's like, you're being honest. It's like, you're wanting it to not affect your bottom line at the end of the day, which I get it. Like, companies need to save money where they can if they're going to be paying their employees and whatnot, how much money, or putting money into projects that people are going to buy more of. And, argumentatively, Capcom has been killing it a lot with their games. I think Street Fighter 6 was really good. Like, their Resident Evil remakes have been killing it. Like, even like the 3 remake, which wasn't like the most well received, still did numbers. Like, I get it. I really do. But I also think that it's kind of scummy to be just point blank basically saying, like, we just want to do this because it saves us money, and that's it. If he tacks on that little bit, like kind of how I was saying, where it's like, oh, we want to save money so we can put that money into other projects, I think that comment goes fine with everybody. The fact that comment stops at it's more of a sales strategy decision makes me think you are not doing this for the greater good of your company. You are doing this because somebody wants their third yacht.
This isn't to put money in making sure that we can have more obscure franchises get new games. This is to save cash here. And, like I said, I certainly give him credit for being honest about it. But yeah, it also, to your point, makes me wary. Like, I think in that same kind of way, they've been doing it brilliantly in terms of the releases for Ace Attorney. The only physical Western releases of those games have been on Switch. Why? Because the original games came out on the DS for like game systems they were otherwise exclusive to the 3DS. What audience do you think is going to be the one that's going to want a physical copy? It's still out on PS4 and Xbox One, but are they going to care as much about having a physical copy as, people who would play it on the Switch? No. So it definitely makes me wary in that same kind of way. Like, oh, so now was that just a fluke? Like, did they just do that because they knew that would be a smart sales decision, or because it's like it, or because it's that and it kind of comes across as like a cool thing to do, So,
and I think honestly, bringing up Ace Attorney actually is a good point, because it's like how we've been talking about a lot of these franchises on Steam, or not Steam, on Switch One. They are at least getting those upgrades, and like I don't see how you can't have a Switch 2 upgrade for like all the Ace Attorney games that they put on. And they did the 2 trilogy packs. We've got the 2 Ace Attorney games for the investigation series. Those actually both being stateside now is a big deal. Capcom, you nailed it. And as someone who spent $90 on a DS copy before you announced that, I'm still butthurt about that, by the way. Like, it's a good way to be able to get people into that franchise now that you have more or less your entire series is on a singular platform. Between the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, the Investigation series, and the 6 mainline entries, you can now reach an entirely new generation of kids and players who only have a Switch, but maybe have not experienced the crazy world that is Ace Attorney. But like, it sucks when it's like some of these like franchises, it's like, yeah, they're being physical on these, but now we're deciding, oh, never mind, we're gonna just cheap out. Like, it sucks. It really sucks. I am a broken record player with the last 2 episodes, I will be frank, but oh my god, this sucks.
Well, right, and it very well could be the case that this is just one guy at the company making this comment, and it isn't really reflective of anything larger, but yeah, when you see it's the case for all these games, it's really hard to come to any other conclusions. And who knows, we could see things change in the future. It's very possible. Maybe, like, I know there's the Mega Man Star Force Legacy Collection that's coming out. That doesn't even have a Switch 2 version, like its own independent version. It's just a Switch 1 version. But I mean, it's also a collection of DS games, so like, does it really need the immense hardware power of the Switch 2 to run? Probably not. So I think in that case, it just kind of makes more sense, and you're making people happy still, because it's still physical. But yeah, that makes me really interested, because now, once again, we're at the point, I brought this up the last time when we talked about the update coming to the Phoenix Wright trilogy. They have no more outs. If they're making any new Ace Attorney stuff, it is a new game this time. So, can I expect then that Ace Attorney 7 is either download only or a key card? Probably.
if there is an Ace Attorney 7, and for the sake of that franchise, I hope there is, I will be playing it as God intended on the iPhone. Look, I saw like a while back that they had them on iPhone, like from the App Store. I legitimately was considering it. Because it literally, like, I got the demo for, like, I think it was the 5th game. And they, like, let you play the whole first chapter on it. And I'm like, this feels weird playing the iPhone version of Ace Attorney.
But it's like legit. It's legit. It's actually pretty good.
Yeah, I'm not bashing it by any stretch. It is a good addition if that is the only accessibility that you have. It just made me realize, it's like, man, I really never thought about the App Store as a place to buy video games.
Yeah, it's all of them are on there except for Investigations 2, I think. Well, in the Games and Chronicles. Well, and to finish this off, man, we're going to hit the 2-hour mark, and dang it, this has to be a 3-parter.
Yay, more.
To be fair, we did start a lot of... We have spent about 35 minutes on our intro-y stuff. So that's our own fault there. This person is the last comment I want to share, because I think the last section... Actually, the last section could be its own episode, knowing us, which is there hope? And I don't know if there's hope. We got a comment posted on X by Masakazu Sugimori. That name might not ring any bells, but if you've paid attention to the credits of Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney and Ghost Trick Phantom Detective, you are very well familiar with that name because he is the composer of the music for both those games. He believes the keycard media is there to, quote, protect the industry. Now, I was only able to get his comments from machine translation, so I don't want to quote them here because it's very well that they could be inaccurate, but I will link his post in like a citations document for this episode, because obviously this one has a lot of citations in it that weren't there for the previous episode because we didn't cite nearly as much. But basically, from the translations of these, it appears Sugimori believes that many of the recent actions taken by Nintendo are meant to protect the industry in 3 ways. He thinks the keycards are a form of piracy prevention that should help like storefronts sell out of their games faster. I don't really know what his rationale is for like these will sell faster, but whatever, that's what he said. He thinks that the price raises are meant to be a green light for other publishers to raise prices, which I mean, obvs. Yeah.
That's not a secret, my guy.
Yeah, like, clearly, that is one of the aspects of game prices we didn't touch on in episode 38, but also a discussion of prices is way outside the scope of this already long episode. And then finally, Sugimori touched on disabling online features in this post that he did. He says it, quote, gives... I shouldn't say... It's not a quote. He thinks that this... like disabling online play for some games gives companies good reasons to continue porting games forward and making their games available on newer platforms, which, I mean, I think there's merit to that idea, kind of, but I think it also really hurts the loyal customer, because if publishers want to continue having consumers repurchase their games, like, it'd really be wise to have, like, automated sales prices on these digital storefronts. Like, I have Super Mario 3D All-Stars, and we just got that Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 re-releases, so, like, I feel like, at the very least, those two should be offered to someone who has 3D All-Stars on their console at a reduced price or free, right? Or maybe Super Mario Galaxy 2 only would be offered at a lower price because it would basically complete the collection since it wasn't in 3D All-Stars, but...
Yeah, which I think is ironic, because it's like, I get you were doing it for, like, 64 and Sunshine and Galaxy. I get that. Because they were, like, the only ones for the longest time until Galaxy 2 came into play. But also the fact that it's like, it's kind of astonishing that you couldn't at least get Galaxy 2 on there when you were doing that initially. Maybe there was a reason for it, I don't know. But
right, and if we have this 5 years later, like, it's not like those games didn't just poof out of existence. All of us who bought the game still have it. So, like, just, throw us a bone, man.
Which I still need to beat Sunshine. That's the only one of the three I haven't actually beaten.
That's the only one for me, too, actually. But Sunshine is a janky game. Anyway, that brings us to the end of the second section. We have, funnily enough, 6 more pages to go in this document, and 6 pages is what we started on last time, so...
We got through a lot of it, to be completely fair, so I'm actually kind of impressed that it's like kind of bookending almost nicely.
So I guess before we end this off again, I kind of want to get that temperature gauge reading. Like, how are you feeling now in terms of like how does this impact how you would look at like these purchase decisions when you now see like this greater context that we've put into this?
I think if I'm being completely honest, it's like I am still very not pro keycard. Like, I am not saying like I haven't heard some stuff that it's like, okay, I can kind of see some merit, like the logic is there a little bit. I think part of it is it's like I don't know if everybody who we've listened to from quotes and like gotten, opinions from, or just even their like statements, I don't know how many of them I actually believe necessarily, because I don't know if they fully understand how the keycard system is going to work. And I think it's going to be a while either way until we have kind of a long-term system. Like, we're in less than a year. Like, we're not even 6 months into the Switch 2's life cycle. So, like, it's really early to, I think, dissect the keycard conversation a little bit. Like, in terms of, like, where are we with it? How are we feeling? What do we expect from it? And we're going to talk more about it in the next episode. Is there hope things could change, which is going to be the bulk of that last episode that we're doing for episode 49. But I think at the end of the day, it's like until probably at least a year out. So like, eventually we'll be at a year. We'll have that episode, like the Switch 2 1 year later, I'm sure. And kind of, we'll probably touch on key cards and kind of where that all sits. Because I'm curious how that's all going to work still with the resale market. Because I don't know how that all is going to work. That's the real question that I still have all with this right now.
I think if anything with it, maybe it'll be 2027 that ends up being the more interesting year for this. Whenever it ends up being the case that we're officially like Switch 1 is completely done and no more games are being made for it, that's when I really think the rubber truly meets the road, because that's going to be like, okay, publishers and developers have had time to consider the Switch 2 as like their base for this is what I want this game to meet hardware wise, and so therefore I need to figure out how to make this be on the cartridge. Otherwise, if they decide like, because the key card exists as like a way to get past some of the limitations of the cartridge, like the load times, maybe they just consider that as their minimum. Like, that's going to be the real moment where we see where do these decisions end up playing out. And
like where are you at? Since we got my opinion, where are you at with the keycard conundrum?
I think I outlined it a little bit, like with my bit on Pac-Man World 2. To me, it's very clear that the decision was made for that, or at least the way it comes across. It could be that when the folks at Bandai Namco were trying to be like, well, how do we want to do this? Maybe because they've had this like sporadic strategy, like that it was more like, oh, I don't know, I guess we'll do the key card for it. Like, it could have just been like, they're not sure. But with the context that we got from the Final Fantasy Tactics director's comment, I'm more firm in thinking like it was a decision based on business, in that they're like, well, we would rather sell this as a key card. So I am more firm in thinking that like I would rather for those probably download it. If it's an exclusive, that's a little bit different. And there's never going to be any way to know completely. Like, I don't. This isn't a game that I want, but like Bravely Default, am I gonna go out of my way to go and research and find like, is there someone on the team that commented why they went with a key card over a download? Probably not. So
obviously, I'm going to use every waking moment and every fiber of my being to do so.
Yes, and that's the other point. It's like the the time, it just doesn't make sense to put that kind of time into researching that. It makes sense for me to put that kind of time in researching it for this, because I'm making this product out of that research. But just for buying a game, like, it doesn't really make sense. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is right now. Like, Capcom, I'm not especially happy with. Sega, on the whole, I'm not especially happy with. But I want to take advantage of the hardware. You know, I shouldn't be stuck with a worse version of Pac-Man World 2 because I want to have it on the media. So I think, like, if I end up getting that game, it is going to be a download, and it is going to be when it is on sale, because I think that also helps, you know, not reward the fact that this is digital, right? It's like, it's saying, I don't think this is worth $30 for me to download this. I think it is worth this. If you'd had it on the media at the outset, and it was the Switch 2 version, I would have probably bought it at launch, and Namco would have made $30 off of me instead of making $15 off of me. So
I think that's still a very accurate thing. It's like, I think what I might actually do, and I'm kind of curious if they'd be willing to at least say something about it. Where we live, one of the local game stores that we talk to, they've started actually selling used Switch 2 games. So I kind of want to see if maybe I can get their 2 cents about, like, what exactly they've seen so far. Like, being a local game store and seeing Switch 2 cartridges now starting to come in. And I am almost positive some of those games are actually the key card only. So I'm curious how that all works on that front.
Well, and that could be another approach too, is, let's say I'm like, maybe I don't want to give any money to Capcom right now because I think they're not doing this right. So I will not be getting Ace Attorney 7 physically.
Oh, that kills
at
me.
All.
That kills me to hear.
Because, let me rephrase it. I will not be getting it new where Capcom gets any of my money out of it.
Right.
But if I go find it at a local store, someone brought in a copy, I'll buy it from them because I want to give them the business. They can have all my money. They're just selling a game that someone else bought.
But yeah, maybe if I get lucky, I'll be able to see if I can at least reach out to one of them and get their 2 cents on it. That actually wouldn't be bad insight from an actual, like, secondhand store, essentially.
See how they're selling, if they're selling at all, you know, what their approach is.
Right, like what their thoughts are on it probably would also help, just to kind of, like, since they are someone who is actively seeing it, like, in real time. Like, it's still early, obviously, so you don't know for sure, but, like, you know, I'm sure there are people that are buying some of that stuff on Switch too, like, already used, because, you know, someone beat the game and decided, nope, I'm going to sell this now, and then called it good. I'm like, okay, I own DK Bonanza at $40 or whatever it is.
Yeah, but Bonanza isn't a good example because that is a proper physical game.
Well, right. I'm just using that because that's the first Switch 2 game I can think of.
What's another one that I haven't necessarily brought up here in a ton of detail? I bought Little Nightmares 3, but it wasn't really my thing. I thought it would be more horror, so I brought it into a shop, but that's a key card, so has someone bought it? Anyway,
I did hear Little Nightmares 3 kind of had mixed reception, at least, because I heard they loved the first 2, and then the third one kind of fell flat.
As did I. I'd heard that it was not a lot of people's favorite. Oh well, it is what it is. You can't please everyone. But hopefully we pleased all of you fine listeners out here with this very long follow-up episode. Again,
gotta work on the phrasing, my guy. Talking about pleasing something with a real long God. Freud, eat your heart out.
Anyway, point is, I hope that even though we had a very long episode here and it was very clearly warranted to make this 2-part and inevitably 3-part now episode, or at least a 3-part topic here, I hope you're able to...
be fair, it's a big deal. It's a very big deal right now. So I think 3 parts actually kind of helps in us.
It's a lot. I know for sure I think we'd probably get a similar amount if we did, like, a deep dive into, like, game prices and all that stuff too, but...
Oh yeah,
Woo!
unless you want to go like 4 episodes now with that. But
No, I think that's a separate issue. But anyway, to finish this off before this ends up being 2.5 hours, I hope you all enjoyed this episode. If you did, please be sure to do all those engagement things that we love seeing you do. That could be liking, that should be sharing a comment, perhaps leaving a voicemail at speakpipe.com/endlessconversationloop. Yeah, whether it's on YouTube or your podcast platform of choice, we'd just love to hear from you. And with that, I think it's time we sign out.
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting you to make some kind of joke there.
No, I'm very eepy right now.
All right. Well, anyway, thank you for listening, everybody. My name is Brandon, and we will see you in episode 49, where we'll finally finish this off.
I'm gonna go take a nap. Bye.
Bye-bye.